So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. And let me welcome each and every one of you in the name of the whole OPER-SP Writing and Peer Review Innovations team. Myself, Erzsébet Cifra, Claire Klivas, Maciej Maril, Elisa Neri, and Jadranka Stoyanovsky. We are going to introduce ourselves in the respective presentations. So let me give the floor in the meantime to our work package leader, Maciej Maril, who is going to introduce you to the team and the work we are doing. Maciej, the floor is yours.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks for attending the workshop. As it was already said by Erzsébet, it's a kind of some effects or kind of midterm effects of our collaboration at the OPER-SP project. OPER-SP stands for preparation of operas, which is the European infrastructure for scholarly communication in social sciences. It's a preparation for the project to enter the roadmap of European infrastructures to become European infrastructure, and also to prepare its kind of long-term goals and long-term program. And this is exactly what we're doing in work package 6 of the project with, as you can see, lots of collaborating institutions, some of them represented today by my colleagues, which were basically kind of focusing on the innovation. So next slide, please. And so I'll just give you the gist of what we're doing without getting into much details with all this stuff, because we'll be focusing on the two last tasks. But basically, we can divide our work into two main kind of groups of tasks. May call them operational tasks and activity tasks. So operational tasks are relevant for the operation of OPERA's research infrastructure. So we have two tasks dedicated first to models of governance, and our colleagues from Luxembourg mostly are evaluating how infrastructures are currently governed and what new modes of governance could be introduced for our project. And in terms of business models, open book publishers survey the new or emerging business models for open monographs, for open books, and try to come up with some ideas and solutions of how to sustain them and how to kind of incorporate this issue into the work of operas. So this is like more for the operation of the infrastructure. Whereas on the other hand, we have some tasks relevant to particular activities, so fields in which operas want to grow and want to the fields which should be addressed by our services actually. So we have a task on SSH for data, so basically the interface between data and publication, and I guess some bits of it will be kind of covered today by Claire and Elisa, who are not working in this particular task, but with the relevant matters. We have a task on bibliodiversity. Bibliodiversity, if you're not familiar with the concept, is basically the idea of diversity with referring to the world of books, so that like biodiversity refers to the environment. So basically the idea is that we need multilingualism, we need publishing in many languages, we need a diverse set of stakeholders in terms of nationality and disciplines, etc. So this particular group addresses this issue at large. And there are two tasks, and I'm just briefly introducing them now because I will talk a bit more about scholarly writing in a second, and quality assessment will be covered by Erzsébet, but it's basically about the future of scholarly writing, so how we imagine it, so what are the new possibilities, opportunities, also obstacles, and what basically scholars need in terms both of tools for writing and assessment of this both of new forms, but also for new novel forms of assessment of traditional writing genres in scholarly communication. So let's go to the next slide, the overview of the workflow, which is basically shared by all the tasks. We're starting with the state-of-the-art review, desk research, literature review to cover the field. Then we move to research, and we used many different methods, but basically the main ones were starting with just consultations, organizing some workshops to get some knowledge. And actually, this workshop could be also considered a part of it as well, because we also are really curious to hear what you think. What are your thoughts about scholarly communication right now? We do interviews, we do focus groups, we did. Some of this work will be featured in further presentations today. And the next stage is the stakeholder validations, again, workshops. So this also could be considered a part of it. We just want to show you some early results and discuss them with you. And also we planned a big conference, and you know how it is with big conferences right now. So it's scheduled for February. So let's see where we're going to be at in February. But if we organize it, we'll of course let you know. Perhaps it will be a virtual conference. We still don't know. Let's just go to the next slide, please. And this is the task I would would like to focus on briefly. So the future of scholarly writing in SSH. And as you can see, there's a huge group of scholars from many institutions which are basically addressing this problem. And you recognize some names of the colleagues who are present with you today. Next slide, please. So the main challenge we have is to explore the current writing practices in SSH, and as I said, to inform the future activities of researchers with regards to publishing technologies and basically the transformations of scholarly communication. But the bottom line here is that our work, what we do, our assessment of those practices will be hopefully in the longer run translated into actual services provided by operas to researchers. So we basically serve as a kind of innovation lab for operas. And to give you the gist, you can go for it. Yeah, please. It is how we do it. It basically we conducting just as literature review as such, just we look because there's plenty of publications already about those issues. We are actually finished the interviews. We conducted over 30 interviews with many stakeholders throughout Europe, also with outside of Europe as well. So we have a huge amount of data for this. Each interview lasted for about an hour and a half. So that's plenty of material to analyze. So we just basically ask them about their experiences with scholarly writing right now, with many dimensions we wish to analyze later. And we also perform some case studies on platforms, interactive monographs, or whatever, just to see what are the current patterns or trends or in tools used to enhance scholarly communication. And please, the next slide, which will be the next, but I'll be back. That's that's what I want to say. That will be in the end, just to address one more thing. But I just wanted to end up with this one, just to give you the main idea of what we're doing here. Here you can see like 3 different examples of something which is called a research workflow, and I think you're familiar with at least one kind of rendition of that process, which starts kind of like as the first one with research design, going through funding, collaboration, lab management, experimental design, data collection, analysis, writing, sharing, submission, publication, showcasing, assessment, and usually it's circular movement. You can go basically around that process. And I think the main thing in our approach here, which we'll be showcasing here and discussing later, is that we think of the scholarly communication as happening not only in the end, that there's this big process and then there's publication and we're fine with it, but rather to think about scholarly communication belonging to each of those stages. So if we translate into scholarly primitives, it would be like belonging to each scholarly primitive, and we would like to look at some byproducts is probably an inferior language, but let's say, some products of all those stages. So, for instance, we will today discuss data as a form of publication, and data stems from one part of this process, and not only from the final one. And I will get back to those issues in the end of the presentation, just to tell you something more about the directions in research assessment. But now I'll just give the floor back to Erzsébet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maciej. And I think I have no other task right now, but just to give the floor to Elisa and Claire, our next presenters. Elisa and Claire, I would ask you to watch the time, because we are already a little bit in a delay. But so Elisa and Claire are going to introduce us to the issue of data publications and their reputation in the social sciences and humanities. So the floor is yours.
So that's our task, and I had here that we have been helped by DARIAH-EU in this project for 2 months. She performed interviews in the German part of Switzerland. So thank you also to Vera. And here you have an image of operas, quite expanding, with 56 organizations in 17 countries. And our group is the first Swiss member of operas, so we are really happy to enjoy of this dynamic. In our research, we are focusing about the transition from paper book to data sets. And I will now pass the word to Elisa that will lead you in the topic. Our main question is, are the research data progressively building new models of writing? And we are really tempted to answer already yes.
Okay, so I'll just quickly do an overview of the scholarship. So yeah, there are 2 aspects that are feeding into this thematic of publishing research data. And the first one, obviously, is that we move away from paper and into the digital medium. And the second aspect is lots of problems that are in the academic publishing world. So the pressure of publish and perish, or perish, problems of peer reviews and economic models. And so these 2 aspects combined to encourage new models of writing and publications. And so the idea that we need to publish research data is not a new one. Maybe we can move to the next slide. So for instance, there is a paper that's from 2011 that is highlighting the benefits such as reproducing results, reusing data, and also assessing the merits of a publication. And then in the following years, there has been many developments, such as, I think you can press next again, and the creation of open repositories such as Figshare in 2012. Respected publishers such as Elsevier and Nature have launched journals to publish research data and data papers in 2014. And also in 2018, the Grutter has integrated a widget to publish code alongside articles. And so the SSH have started to follow in the same direction not long after. We have 2 journals, the Journal of Open Humanities Data that started in 2015, and also the Brill Research Data Journal for SSH in 2016. And so we are going to talk about these journals during the breakout rooms later. But to sum up, so the data papers that they are publishing are defined as scholarly publications, and they describe a data set that is accessible online and also published according to academic standards. So this data paper format is becoming an established form of scholarly writing. And there are lots of data journals And the purpose is to give credit for the effort that is required to prepare and curate and contextualize data with the proper metadata. And so as such, we think that data and its description is indeed a new model of scholarly writing that was first adopted by STEM disciplines, but now also in SSH. And so now for us, the question is to identify what are the conditions to foster the publication of data and the obstacles. And so there are two categories of potential problems, the research challenges and data storing and curation problems. So I will look a little bit more at the research challenges, which cover broadly the social and economic aspects of publishing ecosystem, and the incentives of an academic career that is influencing how we publish. And so publishing in academia is not only about increasing our knowledge, but also it's how scholars get credit. And maybe the next slide. And so this currency of academic credit is not gold, but it's a reputation that is measured by all sorts of analytics, like the number of publications and citations and so on. And also writing monographs, that is quite important for social science and humanities. And so the thing is, if you need to write a printed monograph to get funding and to get a stable position, well, that's what you're going to do. And so you are going to spend your time on this instead of other things. That's going to be a priority. And so during our interviews also, this was a recurring topic, that data publishing is too time consuming and that you need to do twice the work, once to have a digital output and also once for a more traditional publication. And in relation to this concept of academic credit is the idea of data hugging, or the opposite of data sharing. That's the fear that someone will take your data and steal it and make a good publication out of it. And so yes, this is a valid fear in a context where a good publication brings you credit and helps you advance your career. So one solution is to encourage data sharing, is to get acknowledgement early in the process and not after the final monograph is published, which can take years. And so in STEM, there is a culture of sharing preprints, and it can be adopted, of course, for articles, but for books, we need more innovative writing models. So for instance, web books where chapters can be published regularly, so that you can get credit for your work even before you have a full monograph. And so this is one really of the biggest obstacles to innovative scholarly publications. That's the reward structure and how research is assessed. And so one possible solution for that is to rethink how research is assessed and to change the metrics of academic credit. And there are initiatives in that sense, for instance, the Declaration on Research Assessment. And for a positive anecdote, I have just heard about two colleagues in the UK whose work have been recognized. So they have worked on databases and digital data standards, and it was recognized more or less as the equivalent of a monograph. So that's a very positive step forwards. And of course, we also need to adopt new peer review practices. And I'm sure that Erzsébet is going to talk about that in a minute.
Exactly. So I think, Elisa, we can maybe slowly wrap it up at this point and keep the rest for the
sure. I don't know
sessions.
If Claire wants to add something.
Yeah, Claire.
No, I keep my stuff for the breakout room. Please go.
Cool. And very quickly, let me give the floor back. Let me take the floor back and talk a little bit about the challenges around research evaluation. So I skipped the description of the task force because Maciej told us anything already. But so here you can find some of the research questions that we are investigating. And please shout out loud if you cannot see my screens. So the questions we are asking from ourselves is, what are the current trends? What are the gaps? What are the community needs in research evaluation? How to realign it with research realities? What are the major obstacles of changes, and what are the proxies in the system with the reasons behind their persistence? And so what are the emerging trends and future innovation in peer review activities? And so I think all these questions can be summarized to this master one, whether peer review is broken these days. And this is a super important question to ask because I think all of you are aware that the peer review is an absolute condition of scholarly communication. So if it's broken, scholarly communication itself is also broken. So just to put you in the mood, I put here a couple of questions to think about. How much peer review is broken? How many hours you spend with submitting a review in general? Have you ever been rewarded by all these hours? And how much time a peer review usually takes? And the fourth question, like whether it's always the most ideal candidates who are doing the peer review, I just decided to translate into a meme, but you know, like the richness of the memes available on the web around peer review already indicate a couple of issues. So yes, I'm going to I'm not going to tell you how things escalated around peer review over time, but this slide will give you an idea about the major issues and like potential areas that we found. So very quickly, the first issue is that peer review is largely a closed system with selective and secretive processes. It's a big black box. And if you think about book peer review, the situation is even worse. The second issue, and this is highly related, of course, like the visibility and inclusivity and efficiency of peer review, because the lack of transparency has an impact on all this. Like as long as it's a black box, we cannot decide whether the pool of peer reviewers are inclusive enough, are representative enough. As long as we cannot make the peer review processes more transparent, it's harder to administrate it, it's harder to credit the reviewers. But another thing is also that, like Elisa mentioned a lot, the digital innovations, digital content types. The question is whether peer review is inclusive with the born digital or web native scholarly outputs, or whether we just reproduce the paper-based scholarly communication as long as it's restricted to only journal articles or books. Maciej already mentioned the prestige, what we call the prestige economy. That is the biggest issue. One of the big issue around peer review is that often the journal or publisher brands are the main factors that gives the greatest recognition to researchers, not their individual publications and not their reviewing activities. And you can imagine the enormous distortion that it imposes on the peer reviewing landscape as well. How much the high prestige venues attract reviewers, how much delay it can lead to, the high traffic to the high prestige publication venues, how many years we are waiting for our contents to be peer reviewed sometimes, and how much it's draining capacities away from lesser new publication venues, for instance, innovative ones. But all probably the biggest issue around peer review, and this is clearly came across in the interviews that we are doing, is that peer review is a very poorly rewarded scholarly activity right now. There is a very little incentive for scholars to conduct this activity. It's very poorly recognized in the tenure promotion assessments. This slide gives you some hard facts, what it means in practice. So you can follow the link afterwards. We're going to share other slides and everything. this is a big, large-scale study conducted by Publons, and they were in 2018, and they surveyed more than 11,000 researchers worldwide about how they are standing with peer review. And one of the major takeaways was that scholars are tired. They have a peer review fatigue, a huge one. And also you can see the numbers here. They spend more than 78,000 hours per year performing peer review. We can open a debate on whether it's free labor, whether it's part of their salaries. It's a secondary question compared to the generic issue of the shortage of evaluative labor. You can also see my slides, a little excerpt from the interviews that we done from a prominent digital humanist. And really, the labor involved in evaluating these things just goes through the roof. And I just don't think people are going to have time to do that kind of evaluation for every piece of digital scholarship that emerges in the next few years. So I think there is a looming crisis for the labor of peer review. So what we're gonna do in the breakout room 2, sorry, Elisa is breakout room 1, mine is breakout room 2, is we are going to check a tool called Publons that is a free online academic social media service that is designed to better showcase one's peer review activities, allows both journals and users to keep track of the peer review that they do. Also, when it's not about open peer review, but the traditional double-blind peer review. So we're gonna take a test drive. We're gonna see whether it works in the SSH context, and generally, how do you like it? Okay, so this is my short contribution. And I think I just leave my slides here and give the floor to our last-ish speaker, Jadranka. Jadranka, are you ready?
In these last few minutes, I would like to give you a short overview on SSH researchers' opinions gathered during the landscape study, which was part of the Opera SPI project activities led by University of Zadar. Next, please. With the landscape study, we wanted to get an insight in the problems, challenges, issues in publishing, information seeking, access, collaboration, etc., needs and habits of SSH scholars in their different roles as authors, editors, reviewers, and users of already published literature. As an instrument, we use a questionnaire, which was filled by 2,300 researchers, which was quite a large sample, and 6 focus groups held in 5 countries for more in-depth insight and collection of qualitative data. Additionally, we identify key stakeholders in SSH scholarly communication. Next, please. So in general, researchers' perception of open access, Elizabeth, you can just open all, yeah. Okay. In general, researchers' perceptions of open access was positive, and the problems with open access were somehow twofolded. A researcher's perception is that there is not enough open access literature. And what was more surprisingly, we recorded misinterpretation and negative perception of open access related to the additional charges, fees, and so-called lower value of open access publication. Often criteria for academic advancement consider open access publications as less valuable, which was the problem. Next, please. Publishing platforms used by researchers do not provide all services and functionalities they need. Regarding information seeking, researchers would like to have a kind of single access point to access all information and also important all services for their all possible roles, author, editors, etc. And what was actually mentioned by my colleagues, research data are more and more considered as important publication type. One of the interesting findings was the one related to the reporting on research results, namely writing process, where tools for collaborative writing, managing references, paper structure, control, markup tools were mentioned as needed. Recommendation for possible publishing outlets would be beneficial. Very often, scholars do not know where to publish their paper or publication. And problems related with publishing in national language are very important too. Next slide, please. Regarding stakeholders, we identified different stakeholders in the scholarly communication systems in SSH. And maybe it's important to mention that service providers that enable creation, circulation, and discovery of SSH content currently have only national or regional reach. Majority of international and national funders have open access policies in place, but there is lack of the adoption of open access principles among private funders and regional funders. Next, please. We recorded as final remarks, it's important to mention that we recorded some significant differences between disciplines, and also as what we need to think for the future when considering new infrastructure and services, we must have in mind that instead of fixed specification for infrastructure and services, we should adopt a responsive and modular development model with frequent user studies. Things are changing quite quickly, and we need to follow all those changes. Thank you.